the audience is saying, we want more women.
Yeah.
We want more black people. We want more disabled people. We want more working class people. We want more people that are from certain backgrounds. That's what we want. So if you don't give it to us, that's fine. We'll go Netflix. We'll go YouTube. We'll go Apple TV. There's other places now where I can get what I want. So TV has had to, and it's TV's biggest fault, in my opinion. They were so complacent for so long, and their refusal to diversify, their refusal to be progressive, and to just always, and even to this day, I think still doing it, to think in the box, has meant now that they've been overtaken by digital. And digital will kill them. Digital will, in the next 50 years, TV will be done.
Jordan Jarrett-Bryan, you are back on Disabled and Proud. Welcome back. How are you?
I made it back. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just saying that it's so nice and sunny. Honestly, like the sun hits your skin and you just feel like a different person. I'm like, oh, this person's been away for 6 months.
Well, I would agree, and I'm very happy for you. But back down here in London, there's no sun. It's grey and it's grim, and it's not raining, which is a win. But but no, in principle, the sun is definitely wanted and needed. I'm just not getting it at the moment, so boo for me.
You know what? Though your time will come. That's what they say,
like
right?
that. Don't worry, your time will come. Don't worry, it'll be your turn soon. It better be.
Fingers crossed, please.
Any day now.
So, welcome back.
Thank you for having me
So
back.
much has changed since I last saw you. We've had a couple of years. We've had Paralympics during that time. TV, talks, everything. So much has gone on.
We've been busy. It's been a busy couple of years. Yeah, we like to try and keep busy. That keeps us out of trouble, and it also pays the bills.
That is also positive.
that helps. But it's been good. It's been good. Yeah, I guess the big main thing in terms of relevance for this podcast will be the Paralympics that happens. Yeah, that was last summer. That was great. That was fun. Yeah, but just generally been busy, been working.
Yeah.
Got some stuff coming the next kind of 18 months. That sounds like a very wide timeline, but
that's a long timeline.
Oh, yeah. The next year and a half, I've got some stuff locked in that's going to be very exciting that I've been working on. So, but the last two has been good. It's been a good couple of years. Can't complain.
Oh, amazing. I'm so glad you brought up the Paralympics because I would love to have a little behind the scenes. What's it like broadcasting during the Paralympics? What is that experience like?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, for someone like me, Brooke, who I'm obsessed with sports. I love sports and I love sports broadcasting and storytelling. That's what journalism basically is. You're telling stories, you're reporting stories. For me, it's the perfect kind of smudge of sports, disability, and media.
Yeah.
And Paris was my fourth game. So I did London, Rio, Tokyo, and now France. And they were all really, really good for different reasons. They've all been amazing. I always feel very grateful that I get asked by Channel 4 to be part of their coverage team. And this one was fun. This one was really good for many reasons. It was good because it was the first one that was in our regional time zone. So the last two have been in Rio and Tokyo. So for outside of the world, time-wise, they're not great. Tokyo in particular. So a lot of the best sports and the action, it's happening at a time that's not conducive to a UK or this side of Europe's or even Europe audience. So this one was like a home games, but not quite a home games. 1 hour out. It's not far. You can get there. It was also good because it was the first one since the pandemic. So Tokyo was locked down, so supporters couldn't go. So it's really, really good to see. One of my big concerns going out there was that, and I can say it now because it didn't come to fruition, but I was genuinely concerned, Brooke, that it wouldn't be that busy. There were reports of ticket sales being quite slow and then kind of building up. But I got there about a week and a half before the game started, and I was a bit concerned, if I'm being honest. But I interviewed the Paris not the Paris mayor, the head of the Paris Paralympic Committee, some dude. And
Yeah.
he was saying to me, no, ticket sales are going really well. It'll be busy, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I'm just like, is that PR talk? Is that just kind of like hype talk? But he was right. It was right. First games came on and it was everyone was packed. So, yeah, better time zone, better location, fans allowed back. Those are the three kind of main things that made me look forward to these games. It was good. It was good fun.
Obviously, Tokyo, in my head, it hasn't, like, that whole time period was like a blip. And so the fact that there weren't any fans at those games must have been such a completely different experience this time around, because you have people walking around and people in the background, and also like the cheering aspect of it as well. But when you're like in your broadcasting moment, like you're having a chat with an athlete, how do you decide what questions to ask them? Where does that come from?
So the Paralympics and the Olympics are interesting because there's so many sports, there's so many athletes.
Yeah.
It's impossible to be across everyone and everything, right? You can't prep for every single athlete. If it's like if it's Wimbledon, or if it's even a World Cup in football, there's obviously
it's a bit different.
It's a little bit different because there's what is it, 32 teams in the World Cup? That's squads of, it's still hard. It's squads of 20 per team. It's a lot of people. But something like F1, Wimbledon, you can be across the whole tournament because it's manageable in terms of retaining information and prepping.
Yeah.
For the Olympics or Paralympics, you can't do that. There's just hundreds. There's hundreds and hundreds of you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
So there's an element of Channel 4 will let me know, although this to a degree, what sports I was doing. So I know that I'm not doing track and field. I know there's a whole team for that. I know I'm not doing the swimming. There's a whole team for that. Cycling, I'm not doing that. And the other big one is I've forgotten. But the bigger sports, I know that I'm not covering those ones. So I can kind of forget about those athletes to a degree, be across what's going on, but I haven't got a prep for those ones. So I know that I'm doing, I'm doing wheelchair basketball, tennis, I don't know, table tennis, and a couple others. So I can prep for those sports. Who are the Olympic champions? Who are the world champions? Who are the European champions? Who are the ones to watch? Is there a British gold possibility across those sports? Are there any kind of rivalries I need to be across and be aware of? So all these things go into my prep before the games even start. This is weeks and months before the games even start. When the games start, invariably you've got books and books and books of notes of prep. You don't use any of them, but you need to have them there just in case, because all this prep you've done for this possibility, the story's changed now because there's this new star that's come from nowhere and now he or she's the story. So now you're interviewing this person. You're like, I've got 17 notepads of notes on these 10 athletes, but actually the interesting person now is this person here. So I've got to prep, get ready for that person. And then it's the element of thinking on your feet. And my thing is always, Brooke, what is it the person at home probably wants to know? So I'm a conduit to you. Do you know what I mean? I'm asking the questions, but I'm doing it to an audience. What do my audience want to know? So in answer to your question, very long-winded way of answering it, there's an element of pre-prep that happens anyway.
Yeah.
But then there's an element of reacting to the story, because things always happen that you don't expect in sport, as you know. So when my producer says to me, right, we're doing an interview with so-and-so today, we've all got Google, right? Quick search. There'll be a Paralympic website. There'll be a Bible we get at Channel 4 of every athlete. So we're doing a little bit of note searching and note making for that person. But it's that combination of I go there primed and prepped for macro interviews, but also being prepared to kind of pivot and react to the kind of more, this happened on the day, right? Let's go and do that now, sort of thing. So it's tricky, but that's sport. That's what I love. It's live sport. Things are happening that you don't expect to happen. You've got to pivot and react very, very quickly. But I love that. I enjoy that.
It sounds like a job that kind of fuels that adrenaline, because
100%.
you've got to be like on your feet, on your toes. Like you said, is that you could have prepped like the best interview ever for someone that you think is going to get gold. And then out of nowhere, someone who's completely unknown comes away and absolutely swoops and takes it out of everyone. And you've got absolutely no notes on them whatsoever.
Completely.
And that itself, exciting, also exhausting.
Very.
What's it like because obviously, what's it? They last for what, 2 weeks?
I think it's 13 days, 12 days. Yeah, I think it's 12
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
So that's like on the job, day in, day out for 12 days, which
Yeah.
like doesn't sound like a lot, but actually when it's like on your feet all the time, making sure that you're reactive, making sure that you're thinking about all of the different questions, all the different people, what game are you at, like who hates who, like what's the secret beef, all of that kind of stuff. That must be absolutely exhausting at the end of it, but also a massive relief.
It's both. It's both. It's very, very exhausting because,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the months and weeks of prep that go into it, that in itself, before the games even start, you're knackered.
Yeah.
But then once the games actually start and you've got to, right, I've got to get in, my driver's got to take me to this stadium to interview this person. And then sometimes you might be halfway to the track and field or halfway to the pool or to the football, whatever it may be. And you'll get a call from your producer or your exec producer saying, scrap that. So-and-so just won a gold there. We need you to go there now. So you're like, I was prepping to do this. Mentally, I've got to now pivot. Do you know what I mean? It's like, whoa, okay. And that is tiring. It's very long days.
Mm-hmm.
It's live TV. So there's no rehearsal. There's no doing it again. It's not pre-recorded. Some of the days that I was doing, we was up. So I did the marathon with David Weir, and that starts at, I think it's like 7 a.m. So we've got
quite
to be
early
there.
start, isn't it?
It's crazy. So I've got to be there for like 5:30 in the morning, and I was out the night before partying, which I shouldn't say.
Of course you
but
were.
I'll say.
I would expect
It was the
nothing
last
less.
night. It was the last night. So I'm like, you know what? I've been really good. I was out there for 3 weeks. I'm like, on the last night, come on.
And also you're in Paris, so you're not going to.
And I'm in Paris. There's parties everywhere. So I'm professional. You know, I was there. I was my call time. I made my call time. I don't drink, so I wasn't hungover. But we might have left the club at about 3:30 in the morning to be somewhere for 5 in the morning to do anything with David Weir. So the point being that was a very early start. We didn't finish filming other sports until, I think it was like 8 p.m. that day. So it was a really long day. I think we did like 3 sports that day. So it's mentally exhausting, being ready to always be on and have half your brain focused on who you're interviewing on your way to interview right now, while simultaneously being prepared for the call that says, scrap that. I need to go here now, sort of thing. So that the day is a long day, but there's a lot in that day. There's a lot of pivoting. There's a lot of being aware. But that adrenaline is why I do this job. I love telling sports stories, and sometimes the story that you think is going to be the biggest story of the week doesn't even make the program, because this story over here is come from nowhere. So it's very, very exhausting. But by the end of it, it's just like, cool. We got a day. We got a good day's work in the can. It's the production team. They're the ones that I really feel for as well, because they're up before us. And again, it's live TV. Channel 4 are doing, I think, of the 24 hours in one day, they're putting out like 12, maybe 15 hours of live sport. 15 hours of live. No, more than that. It was pretty much the whole day, apart from overnight. So like 15 hours of live sport a day. That's a lot. That's a lot of prepping. That's a lot of planning. That's a lot of replanning. That's a lot of, we scheduled this for today.
It's a lot of tech as well, isn't it?
It is a lot of tech. It's a lot of deploying cameras here.
Yeah.
It's a big production. So everyone's just tired, because we all love sport and we all love TV. We're all just getting on with it. We're all just making the best of it. And it's 12 days. I mean, it's not 12 days. The games are 12 days. But if you factor in the entirety of the production, I mean, I was there a week and a half before the game started. There were people there a week and a half before me. So by the end of it, some of the people from Channel 4 and Whisper Productions were there for best part of 3-4 weeks. Plus, some of those guys have done the Olympics. So
they've basically been there for 2 weeks. Not 2 weeks, 2 months.
They've been there for 2-3 months. Do you know what I mean? So it is very, very exhausting. But by the end of it, you're like, you know what? We did some good work. We don't win the medals, but our job is to tell the stories of the people that do win medals. So we can't tell stories without the stories there to be told. But our job, once stories happened, okay, now go and run with it. And by the end of it, we were all knackered, but we felt we did some good work for sure.
Yeah. What was your favourite story from this year's Paralympics?
Oh.
Yeah, have a think about that.
Oh, yeah. What was my favourite story?
Or like the one that you walked away from and you were like, I did a really good job and that was such a banging interview and I smashed that real good.
Well, that's every interview, but I think for me, I mean, that's a day's work, Brooke. Come on.
All right, Jordan, calm down. You're good, but you're not that good.
I jest. I'm not that good. I can't think of there were a lot, but mine's gone blank. But the thing that I was really pleased with was that David Weir interview.
Yeah.
I got the exclusive, if you like, or the first line that he was retiring from the Paralympics. So
wow.
Forgive me, I've forgotten where he finished in that race. But when he came through, because we're the rights holders, we after the guys from OBS who put out all the content via Olympics and Paralympics for their own feed that they sell to everybody else. After those guys were the first people the athletes come to, because we're rights holders, right? So he came to me first. I know David a little bit as well. And we were talking about the race, talking about how he found the games. And he, I got a newsline out of him. As a journalist, you're looking for a newsline. What's the newsline? And it very rarely happens. But to be the person that was the first journalist to kind of hear from this multi-Paralympic champion, this is my last games, that was a great moment for me personally. As soon as he went off, I tweeted my boss and said, right, get this clip out now, because that's a newsline. David Weir announces that was his last ever Paralympic race. That's a newsline. So that for me was a bit of a win, which I was quite proud of. Oh, what were the other great stories? I'm so bad with names, and it's not good being a journalist. There was a young lady. I think she was 13 in the table tennis. Brit, who got to a couple of finals. She smashed it. She was lovely as well. Oh man. We'll end this recording, and then I'll think of like 5 amazing things.
I'll get a message later being like, this person, this person, this person, this person.
I know. It's so bad. The David Weir thing comes to mind. That sticks out for sure. But it was a great game. It was full of just really interesting sporting stories. People with their first games. Another lady, the para archer athlete. This is so bad. She won a gold and a bronze whilst pregnant.
Oh, yes, I remember this story.
You remember that one?
Yeah.
She was also dope. She was really cool. I really liked her. So those sorts of things are really interesting to me. To be able to push your body to the pinnacle of sport whilst you have life inside you.
Oh, I know. It's insane.
It's mad. It's mad. I've got nothing but respect for those people. So there were lots of stories that came out of it. It was a good games. It was a really good games.
Yeah. It sounds like it's such a fun job to do as well.
It's the best.
But like obviously we've spoken about how it can be really tiring and you're constantly like on the go. But other than that, what is like the worst part of doing that type of job? Particularly like around the Paralympics, what's the bit where you literally like you're slogging through it and you dread it a little bit?
Good question. What's the worst part of the
like could even be the people,
Look, my crew was really good. My production team that I was with were really, really cool. Big up Alicia. She was my producer for most of the game. She was lovely. I think one of the worst things for me, and this might sound a bit stupid, but it's missing out on the stories. So it's knowing that you're in covering one sport and you're hearing about something great happen. And I want to be over there. I want to be covering that story. I want to be doing that interview. I want to do that. That's just the kind of competitive journalist inside of me. It's kind of hearing in the WhatsApp group that we kind of had while we're out there. So-and-so has just interviewed so-and-so who's revealed blah, blah, or someone just done won a gold and it's gone viral. It's like, I wanted to do that story. So that was a very kind of competitive negative for me. What other things do I not like about the games? I mean, one of the things that I'm interested in, this is kind of with my news hat on, I was looking at things and stories beyond sport, right? So being out there, one of the things that I did, speaking to a lot of people, I chat to a lot of people, I'm very nosy. I was chatting to a lot of the French people and trying to get a sense of how they felt about Paralympic and disability sports.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, we're going to be honest. A lot of us here didn't even know it was happening. A lot of Parisians during the summer, and this is for the Olympics and Paralympics, they leave Paris, so they weren't even there. So
They
like, a
weren't
lot of
even
people
there.
here, yeah, France is kind of dead in comparison to what it's normally like. But they were telling me, like, if they're being honest, a lot of them don't know a lot about Paralympic sport. But their biggest issue, which I did a bit of work on, was disability rights in Paris and France weren't great. They
Yeah.
weren't good. And the thing that kept coming up more than anything else was transport.
I was about to say there was a lot of commotion
A lot.
before everybody went to Paris
Yep.
because of how inaccessible it is as a city.
Yeah.
I remember reading multiple different pieces about how even like the metro in Paris is super inaccessible. So how are we expected to get Paralympians all around, you know, the city of Paris when actually like it's just inherently inaccessible? So I can so imagine that story was a really interesting one to kind of dive into.
They were pissed. They were like, look, we're really glad to have the Paralympics here. Like, it's amazing. This is one of the biggest sporting tournaments in the world. But we're also quite embarrassed because we know that, you know, when you guys go, that for the lives of disabled people in Paris and wider France is crap in terms of getting around. So people don't go out anywhere. They stay at home all the time. You know, if they do have to leave their house, you know, what should be a 20-minute journey could be 2 hours because they have to think of other, do you know what I mean? And disabled people, I think globally can relate to that. But I think that it made me think about London and where I live, and lots of the tubes are accessible now. Some aren't. And Tanya Gray Thompson, who was out there with us as part of our coverage team, she, the week before the games, had gone to the press about a story where she was coming into London on a train, and there were no helpers, there was no staff.
Did she not get left on the train for like an hour or something?
I think it was over an hour to crawl off eventually.
Yeah.
And I put that question to the Prime Minister, who was out there in Paris as well, to say, look, you guys Labour want to bring transport back into power. This is disgraceful. Like, this needs to not happen ever again. So just thinking about how the rest of the world and London, my city, its accessibility needs were clearly better than Paris's, but work needs to be done still. But the Parisians were like, it's nothing. If you're in a wheelchair, if you're on crutches, if you're disabled, forget about it. Unless you've got someone that can drive you places, you are going nowhere. So those kind of things for me were the kind of sad things about being in Paris, because the reality of the games are great, sport, gold medals, yay, we're having fun. But for the lives of millions of Parisians, French people, they're like, yeah, this is fun for you guys. You're seeing Paris, you're on holiday effectively. But for us, when you guys go, this is going to be back to normal for us. So that was a negative, seeing and hearing those stories about how people can't get around the city and the country. I got the worst memory, Brooke. Forgive me. I'm trying to think of something really. What didn't I like? What didn't I like? What didn't I like? I think that was I mean, that's something whimsical and airy fairy. It was generally a really positive games. I really liked the opening ceremony, unlike the Olympic opening ceremony. I thought the closing ceremony was good because it was short. I think ceremonies should be short. Just, you know, spectacular.
Keep them short and sweet. Love that.
Let's keep it moving. All this 3-hour nonsense is like, oh,
we got places to be, people
things
to
see,
do.
and it's raining, so it's like, you know, let's just, you know, hurry up a little bit. Yeah, come, let's go. So no, I'm being a bit boring here, but I genuinely can't think of too many things that I didn't like. I wish I had more gossip or more tea on that. But I don't. That's pretty boring. Sorry.
I don't think it's boring at all, though, because I think it just goes to show that you were so in the game when you were there, that you were just, you know, looking at everything around you. And it's really interesting about, you know, the talks that you had with Parisians, because it's almost like that kind of more sinister underbelly of like, actually, this is a reality. Like we're putting on a show for now, but as soon as the show's over, like we go back to reality and nothing has actually changed.
Well, to be fair, I did interview the IPC, International Paralympic Committee president, and the same guy who was like the head of the Parisian Paralympic Committee. And they both said to me, I put that question to them. I said, yo, I'm speaking to your people out here and they're pissed. They're not happy at all. But like, what are you saying? And they were like, look, we're aware of this and we have committed X amount of millions of euros into accessible transport. So I'm like, cool. My big thing is 4 years on, I'll look back, or even a year on, I want to look back and see actually if that money's gone in, if things have changed. Because, and I asked this to the president of the IPC, I said to him, you guys have a responsibility to not only put on a fantastic Paralympic Games, that's your primary job, but you also have to be aware, as with the Olympics, that you have to leave a legacy. What's your legacy in these cities that you're coming into? Do you know what I mean? And he said, look, we're working with the Paris authorities to ensure that there's an ongoing benefit and a legacy. Now, look, they may just pack up and go home and the cameras are off, we keep it moving, we're done, But I'd like to think that there is some kind of ongoing strategic commitment to ensure that when these guys do go, that you know, or even the other way around, if we award you an Olympics or a Paralympics, it comes with stipulations.
Yeah, I think that should so be the case. You should have like set rules and regulations of how accessible it needs to be, because there is no point in a city that's inherently inaccessible having a Paralympic Games.
No.
And like you said, actually, what's the legacy after that? Because it doesn't actually bode that well if you haven't changed after having that many disabled people in your, like, you know, however big your square mile radius is. Like, what are you doing to benefit people?
It's crap. The Paralympics and sport is about people. If the people don't feel like they're involved or included, or it's their Paralympics as well, how can you feel a sense of national pride or city pride that you've had a Paralympic Games if you're not involved in it? Do you know what I mean? Or at least, okay, you weren't involved in it, but at least it's a commitment. Because if you ask a lot of Parisians, would you prefer the best Paralympic Games ever or better transport for the next 20 years?
Better transport.
They put a bit of transport. Do you know what I mean? So give them one of the two at least. Do you know what I mean? And for some Parisians, they felt like they weren't getting either. I'm not involved in this Paralympic Games because I can't get to it. And also I know when these guys go, my life goes back to being equally rubbish without the pomp and ceremony. So I think that's something that I think that the IPC needs to kind of look into and make sure that when they rock up in LA in 3 years' time, and I think it's Brisbane after that, if they're giving these cities these games, there's some kind of commitment that actually we expect you to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so true. Well, at least LA is LA, right?
I've not been LA. I'm if I go, I'm looking forward to doing LA and seeing what LA and what an Olympics and a Para is going to be like, especially about getting political under a Trump presidency. I'm really interested to see how sports is done and Paralympic sport is done in a city like Los Angeles. So we'll see. Yeah,
you have been broadcasting and being on TV and being a journalist for many, many years now.
I'm really sorry about that. To all the viewers, I can only apologise.
Sorry, I'm so good at what I do. But actually, during that time, I was wondering, like, during the whole time that you've been like broadcasting, been involved in TV, been involved in media, how do you think representation has changed during that time from when you first started to, you know, let's say today?
Well, first of all, and this is an example of it changing, because when I first started, there was no YouTube, there was no podcast, there was no, do you know what I mean? You're your own publisher now. You're your own broadcaster. You don't have to, this podcast didn't have to wait for the BBC to commission it or Channel 4 to commission it. Brooke commissions it.
I did it.
You did it. You're your own commissioner. So the fact that the power now is the power's been democratized, if you like, for people now to be able to decide what they want and how they're going to do it, and not having to wait or be or not be beholden to a broadcaster in a way that 15, 20 years ago you couldn't get content out unless you had it commissioned. So that's one big sign of progress in terms of representation. I get to see and hear the stories of disabled people on Disabled and Proud in a way that was never happening on mainstream TV. I mean, 20 years ago, you weren't even hearing about the Paralympics that much, let alone, do you know what I mean? Other people's stories. So there's that. I think now, because content and television and radio and other outlets of media are so popular now, and the audience want it so much, the audience are deciding what they want to see and what they want to hear. So that means that TV now has to pay attention. For me, it's too late. They've lost a generation. TV will be dead in the next 30, 40, 50 years. But
Interesting.
but the TV, but the difference is now that TV has to listen to what the audience want. The audience is saying, we want more women, we
Yeah.
want more black people, we want more disabled people, we want more working class people, we want more people that are from certain backgrounds. That's what we want. So
Yeah.
if you don't give it to us, that's fine. We'll go Netflix, we'll go
Yeah.
YouTube, we'll go
Yeah.
Apple TV. There's other places now where I can get what I want. So TV has had to, and it's TV's biggest fault, in my opinion. They were so complacent for so long, and their refusal to diversify, their refusal to be progressive, and to just always, and even to this day, I think still doing it, to think in the box, has meant now that they've been overtaken by digital. And
Yeah.
digital will kill them. Digital will, like I said, in the next 50 years, TV will be done.
Do you
It might,
think?
it might be 30 years, but 50 years, yeah, it'll be done. I'll be if I get another 50 years, God willing, I think we will see the demand. TV will be done by the time I leave this earth. So I think what I've seen in the last 40 years is the supply and demand has now meant that TV and radio, isn't the go-to place that it used to be. And if you look at a lot of TV channels and even radio stations, they're focusing a lot more now on their digital outputs. Look at
Yeah.
the BBC, look at Talk Sport, look at ITV, Channel 4, all traditional broadcast platforms. They're now digital. They're now focusing on putting out their money because they've realized that, actually, the audience is bigger over here. We can have both. But like I said, the problem is that it's 10, 15 years too late. If they'd have done this and diversified earlier, they still might have been on a ticking time bomb, but I don't think it would have been as soon as it has been.
God, it's so interesting, isn't it? Like this idea that TV could be dead within the next 30 to 50 years, and it's like, because it's almost an institution, really. And that idea that it wasn't as quick as like you said, quick to diversify as like everywhere else was. When you think about like Netflix and you think about Apple TV and you think about like Disney Plus, like these are all like main now what I would actually call like a mainstream outlet of media, because they're already inbuilt in TVs now. Like, whereas what's super interesting is that normal channels like BBC, ITV, Channel 4, they aren't already inbuilt into TVs. And I find that absolutely fascinating.
It's mad, isn't
now,
it?
when you buy a new TV, I remember so clearly getting a TV when I was younger. I must have been like 10, 11, 12, somewhere around that age. And I had one of those like box TVs in my bedroom, thought it was really cool. And it only had like channels 1 to 5. And like Netflix didn't exist. Apple TV didn't exist. And then I recently got a new TV because I've moved house. The first thing that was on my TV was Netflix, Disney Plus, ITVX, and just like a whole other bunch of like apps. And I was like, gosh, it's changed so much. Is that I don't really watch any actual TV.
Well, that's what when I go into schools and colleges and do talks about. I'm studying at the moment. I'm teaching. I'm lecturing at Brighton Uni, sports digital journalism.
Oh,
One of the
wow.
first things I ask, I'm loving it. It's amazing. One of the first things I asked the class was, how many of you guys watch television? And of the class of 40, I think 10 put their hands up. I said, of that 10, how many of you consume more than 2 hours of TV a day? That's not sport related. They all put their hands down.
And that was it.
And that was it. And the point I was making to them was, digital is that you guys, without even knowing it, don't even respect TV anymore. All of what you consume is on your phone, is YouTube, it's Apple, it's Netflix. These are the platforms. So this is what you need to double down on. So the reason why, I could be wrong, maybe TV won't die. But for me, look at the demographic of people that watch television. It's people who are 40 upwards, probably even 50, 60 upwards. And without being crass and a bit rude, when those people, let's say, move on and are no longer with us, that generation will be the last generation of people that watch TV. I'm at Channel 4 News, that's where I work. Our digital output is just flying because we recognized years ago that's where people are going to be consuming their news. The days of going home and watching 6 o'clock news for an hour or 7 o'clock news for an hour, we're an hour-long program. Who does that? Who goes home at 7 o'clock and for an hour watches any TV for an hour, let alone news? There's very few people. So when those people are no longer here anymore, you've got to look to the majority of people who are under 50, under 60, and they all consume digital. If they do watch TV, it's either live sport, and that will change as well. In the next 10 years, that will change. Don't worry about that. Or films. And even films now, Netflix, if you watch Netflix, all the biggest movie stars, they're not putting out films anymore. They're all on Netflix.
Do you know what? That is, again, so true. I was flicking through Apple TV and I was just looking at the films that they just have. And I was like, oh my God, there's some really big actors here.
They're all on Netflix.
And I was like, of course they would be here because that's where the eyeballs are, right?
Totally. So I could be wrong. I'm often wrong, but I'm just looking at the maths, the evidence. The evidence is telling me who watches TV. It tends to be older people and even older people. It's 50-50 now. So I think again, long-winded way of answering your question. I think the biggest difference I've seen is digital. And what digital has allowed people to do is to watch what they want, from who they want, when they want, how they want.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because you think about how much, like I said earlier, how much an institution it is, and actually it is dwindling, and it's also losing a lot of power as well. Because, like you said, I don't remember the last time I sat down and watched the news personally, because I don't actually like watching the news anyway. Like I find it incredibly negative. There's never anything positive on it, and actually it just puts you in a bit of a bad mood. But the idea that I would waste an hour of my time to watch that is like blows my brain, and that people used to do it religiously
every single day. And also with digital as well, by the time you get home from work at 6-7 o'clock, with Twitter, with Instagram, with WhatsApp groups now, you know the news during the day anyway. The days of like you didn't know the news all day, you'd come home to find out the news, them days are gone. We're all in WhatsApp groups where, I don't know if you just heard today when we're recording this morning, Gene Hackman and his wife have both died. I don't know if it's a double homicide or double suicide. Can you have a double suicide? No, you can't have double suicide. Someone's got anyway, they're both dead, right?
Either way,
they're no longer with us, right? I found that out what time is it now? It's now 10:30 in the morning. I found that out at 8:30 this morning. So, do you know what I mean? You know the news during the day because of digital, because of WhatsApp groups. So by the time I get home tonight, I don't need to watch the news. I know what's happening during the day because mobile phones and laptops.
And actually, really interesting point. So I was watching the Calcutta Cup at the weekend. So for those who don't know, the Calcutta Cup is the Six Nation game between England and Scotland. It's my favourite Six Nations game and I love it. I was watching it at a friend's house, but we had to pause it because, well, my friends delightfully paused it for me because I was late. Of course, I'm always a bit late. But we all had to put our phones in a different room because like some of us were going to get notifications from BBC Sport what the score was, or like someone would text us. Like I was having family members text me left, right and centre, and I was like, I can't have this conversation because we were 15 minutes behind everybody else, but we knew that if we had our phones on us, the whole score and the whole game would be completely ruined for us, which is absolutely bonkers now when you think of it. That we can pause live sport. Love that for me because it meant I got to see the 15 minutes that I was late for. But also that we would already know the answer because someone would text it, or we would get a notification, or like, something, if someone went onto Instagram and they followed like the Scotland squad, for example, it would be there in front of their face. And that is absolutely insane that we didn't have that even 15 years ago.
We didn't. And I think that's in some ways, for you on this occasion, it was a good thing. But I think the digital, it helped you in this case. But I think having so much digital information and accessibility can sometimes be a negative thing. I think, all right, although the first 15 minutes you missed, I think having so much access to digital information and digital formats, it makes it makes you more digitalized, if I'm making sense. I think it takes something away from how we used to be. And I think there were positives about how we used to be. I think now we're so consumed by wanting everything and wanting it on our terms. I think you lose something. I'm not really explaining it correctly, but I think there are pros and cons to having a more accessible media landscape. One of them is you can have it on your terms for sure, but I think it changes how you operate and behave if you know you can have things when you want, how you want, when wherever you want them. So it's generally a good thing. The media's definitely improved. The people that I think are making media and those have access to the media, I think it's generally a positive thing. Although, again, a slight negative would be that what this new media world we live in now has enabled is that everyone now has to have a say. And that in some sense is a good thing. Others, it's a bad thing. There's a lot of nonsense that people talk online. I saw a really good funny joke. I can't remember how it was worded, but somebody was saying one of the biggest issues now with the world is that podcast equipment is too cheap. So everyone can buy a microphone.
I fully second that. I fully second that.
That's true. A microphone and a bloody camera, or your phone, you can buy for not a lot of money, which means everyone now has an access to have, a podcast outlet and talk rubbish. So it's
just like we're doing right now.
Exactly. Some would say that's what I make a living out of. So you know what I mean.
No, but I fully agree with that. The amount of like clickbait that you see that happens to be like very stereotypical, like good-looking white boy sat in Bali being like, I found the key to life. And it's like,
please.
Eat a vegetable. And you're like, oh my God, like how are you here? Like personally, I think if you're going to do this type of thing, at least have like a real message that you want to like
have something to say.
Not just be like, I think, just not fluff. I don't love fluff. I think fluff is just it's unnecessary.
The problem is
you're not doing it to serve like a common goal.
Nope.
Get out of the way.
So the problem is that there's too many people who don't have an expertise in any one thing. There's too many people now that have opinions on things, and opinions are fine, whatever. But if you're doing a podcast, have something of substance to say and be offering me. Don't just give me your waffly, whiffy, wishy-washy opinions on anything and nothing. Just talking nonsense. Give me something where I'm like, okay, he or she talks crap about X, Y, Z, but that thing, I listen to him or her because I know that they know their stuff. There's too many people that just come online now and just talk. Talk. And that is a downside of having a more democratized media landscape.
Yeah. You have recently started your own podcast.
So speaking of people talking nonsense on podcasts.
I know we're really doing ourselves a disservice by talking about this, but like actually I really back myself. I am like 10 out of 10 cracks. Here we are.
You are.
But you have recently started your own podcast called, what's it called? The World's Coolest Disabled.
Yeah, it's called Jordan Jarrett-Bryan's The World's Coolest Disabled. Now, I know people will think this guy's a little bit arrogant. I'm not
because
arrogant.
Because he is.
I am the coolest guy in the world, but I'm not arrogant. What it is, I mean, I'm very confident, Brooke, and I like to think I kind of toe that line of arrogance and confidence pretty well. I hope I do.
Yeah.
But the word coolness or cool is just a euphemism for confidence. So the podcast of which you have featured on, your episode will be out very, very soon. Is looking forward to people seeing that because we had a really good chat. But the podcast is basically about chatting with people. You're not one of these people, but disabled people who have low confidence and have done or are doing just really amazing things, but just don't hype it. Yeah, just chat about it. I'm like, yo, I'm super, super cool. But so are you.
Yeah.
So are you. Like, the difference between me and you is that I've got a bigger mouth, but you've done some really cool things. Let's chat about that. Let's tell the world about those sort of things. So if I've got to use my big mouth and my confidence to drag you up to talk about your great things, I'm going to do that. And I think in a time when, I mean, your podcast is literally the only podcast here in the UK anyway that talks to disabled people and their stories. There's no other podcast from what I've found, and that for me is really, really bad. So I'm looking
Yeah.
at it like, you're disabled. Where do you see and hear people that look and sound like you
Mm-hmm.
or have similar experiences to you, apart from when the Paralympics comes on? There's nothing. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing. So I
And
thought, you know what?
realistically, the Paralympics aren't actually that relatable.
They're not relatable at all.
You know?
These are people that are like 10 times more talented than me, and I tell their stories and they're great, but I can't relate to doing what you did. I can't swim
Yeah.
I can't swim with bloody one leg and two arms, let alone no arms. And do you know what I mean? It's like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? You're miles ahead of me. So there's nothing for the everyday person. So I just thought, start up a podcast that talks to these people. Hopefully other people that watch it will be like, I find that interesting. But also, this was key. I didn't want to do a podcast that just primarily focused on their disability. I'm interested in your disability for sure. There are things about your disability that I think are interesting and are worth talking about. But
Yeah.
your disability is one element of your characteristic or element of your personality and your character. You're also a woman. You're also, Indian. You're also funny. These are all things that make up who you are.
Yeah.
Disability is one of them. So let's not lead with that. Let's talk about you. And when we chat about the dope things that you've done, your disability will just come through. It will come out. We haven't got to formulaic. So, Brooke, tell me about how you lost your hand or your arm. What? It's like, no. We haven't got to do that. Let's just chat.
Yeah, let's just have a chinwag and make it like a really normal conversation. Yeah. We had a good time. I enjoyed being on your podcast. It was good fun.
Thank you very much. You were great. And as I mentioned, your one will be out very, very soon. I'm looking forward to the reaction to your one. So
just hope I don't get cancelled. I've been thinking about this. And I was like,
if you're going down, I'm going down with you. So we'll go down together. It's fine.
Something that we always end up talking about is disability in dating. And it's something that you have like always said that it's something that really fascinates you.
It does.
And I like, what is it about disability in dating that fascinates you?
So dating periods and the whole relationships and sex, those three things just interest me generally. Not because I'm a perv, but just because I'm just really fascinated. I'm not a perv, I promise. I'm getting cancelled now. But I'm just interested in dynamics, motives, outcomes, and the differentials between people that define how they date, how they have sex, how they are in a relationship, how they get married. So take disability to one side for 1 second. I'm interested in, the differentials of race in dating. I'm interested in the differentials of differing in politics. How does someone who is a hardcore Tory and someone who's very, very left-wing and progressive, how does that work? I'm interested in financial differences. Someone that has come from nothing and is used to a lifestyle of poverty, meeting someone who is uber rich. How does that work? So disability is no different. It's just another differential for me, but there are practical things that come with that. So I'm interested in, what is it like for someone who's got a disability that's physical and very visible? How do they go about dating apps?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do they just say, F it, I am who I am, this is who I am, take me as I am, let's go? Or are they quite shy and quite reserved about wanting to put themselves out there? Do people lie about it to test people and see? I saw someone sent me a thing the other day about a lady who was a dwarf, but on her profile, you can't see that. But when she meets the guy, she turns up, the guy's face is like, those things fascinate me. Why do we judge people? Because we all judge people. I judge people. We all judge people. Let's not pretend like we don't judge people. But I'm more interested in, do we know we judge people, accept it, and then once we've established that, how does that judgment inform the next stage? So I've judged you because you wasn't what I was expecting, but okay, you're still very funny. You're still very sexy. You're still very intelligent. These are things that are surely more important than, this person's in a wheelchair. Or this person.
So it's more about, for you, like challenging the unconscious bias that somebody has.
Yeah, exactly. And I've just finding love and dating, it happens such weird ways. I just think putting, if you like, unconventional things on top of that, i.e., someone who is a dwarf meeting someone who's not a dwarf, just interests me. Sex. I mean, we don't talk about sex as disabled people, and I'm like, why?
No, it's someone said to me on this podcast, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was because it was on one of the earlier ones, and they said that disability in sex is like the last big taboo, and it's something that we absolutely do not talk about. We have no references, we have no conversation, and actually, when it comes to disability in sex, interestingly enough, if we do have these types of conversations, at some point in time, it will be fetishized.
Yes.
Like disability is still fetishized in that very quite like dark and demeaning way when it comes to when we talk about sex, because we don't ever think of just like two disabled people having sex, or a non-disabled person and a disabled person having sex, because God forbid that's not like a kink or something else, or they actually just like the person.
Totally. And I just think that we don't, it's really weird to me because we don't have any kind of compunction about talking about sex between, you know, a black person and a white person, or two people who are gay, or two people who are any other characteristics, but with disabilities, like, oh, we can't discuss that. And I'm like, I want to be very clear. I wouldn't be having a conversation with somebody and be like, right, so how do you get out of your wheelchair and get into bed? And, you know, how do you, say something really rude there. I don't know how PG we can get on your podcast, but how do we...
you, boo.
Yeah, how do we...
I always tick explicit.
Because it's like, all right, so I said to my friend that this is about a month ago at dinner, we were talking about this, because he was dating somebody who was disabled at the time, and he was saying how after the first 2 dates, it wasn't a thing. Like he didn't notice, he didn't notice it anymore, right? Which I think is probably problematic to a degree, but whatever. He meant it in a good way. And then he was talking about the fact that I've never been in bed with somebody who's in a chair before, and I didn't know, and this was what made me laugh. I didn't know how to go about like getting a blowjob from her, and I didn't know if it was like, do I help her? Is this her first time? I'm like, bro, like she's 39 years old. She's given blowjobs before. Like, let her work it out. It's fine. Like, what are we doing here?
She has survived all this time without you. Like, funnily enough,
she's good. Like, don't worry about it. But I find it interesting that he was thinking, how do I? And that for me was an innocence of, he wasn't being malicious. He just genuinely was a bit like, I don't know how to go about this particular encounter. And it got me
because
thinking,
we don't have that conversation.
We don't. And I don't think it's something we've got to have every single day at the dinner table, but I just find it interesting from the kind of real kind of subtleties of thinking about dating a disabled person to the other end of the spectrum. It's like, how do you do certain positions with somebody who's disabled? It's like, those things just fascinate me personally. Let's chat about it. Sorry.
Why not though? But I'm in agreement. I think these conversations should happen a lot more, because I think people get very scared. And I go back to what I say about fetishization, is that the disabled body is so often fetishized. Like, you look at the amount of devotees that there are, and particularly like for online access, and actually there is something about it that's so, it's got like a really seedy underbelly, hasn't it, when you talk about disability, because we haven't had like a safe space to talk about it. Totally. And there's been like no the word that I'm looking for, there's been like no repercussions for fetishizing disabled bodies up until quite recently, when we were like, do you know what, actually that's not okay. Like, do you know what, like that's not cool.
So let me challenge you a little bit on this then, because the fetishization of disabled people, is that not just an extension of what we all do anyway? So hear me out. How different is seeking out somebody who, I don't know, has one leg, for example, and finding that particularly erotic and something that turns them on? How is that any different from somebody who really is turned on by somebody who's black, or somebody who's blonde, or somebody who has a particular bum shape? Is that not just an extension of, there's something about you that I particularly find attractive and sexy, and that is my kind of go-to sexual
preference.
Is that and people might say, well, a fetishization is when that's the leading thing that makes me want to talk to you. I'm only talking to you because you've got one arm. I'm only talking to you because you're in a chair. But again, I know people that only talk to people who are South Asian. That's their leading thing. I know people that only talk to people who are 6 foot plus. Like, I'm just wondering how different is being fetishized to any other thing that we do.
I think there is like a level of power that's involved with fetishization, and I don't think it's power from a good place. I think it's power that can be quite dark, and particularly when I'm in my head, I'm thinking about devotees online, right? And people who, there is some form of like power play, and it's because your body is different, I can overpower it, and that's what I look for. It's not necessarily that you only have one leg, or it's not necessarily that you only have one arm, or it's not necessarily that you have a stoma. At some point in time, I will be able to overpower you, and that's the thing that turns me on, and that's where I'm coming from. But that's like 9 times out of 10 when I'm thinking about devotees, that's what I'm thinking about, because it is some form of like, I'm stronger, fitter, better. And it comes down to that, right? Stronger, fitter, better than you. And I'll be able to overpower you because I'm not disabled and you are. So therefore you're the weaker one. And there's something quite like prey and someone, you know, being, what's the opposite of prey? Like, what's, if you've got prey, that's it. Prey and predator. Like there's something quite predatory about it, and it's not, I get your point about like, oh, surely it's not just like another characteristic that someone's attracted to, and like that's absolutely fine if that's what it is. But quite often when I'm thinking about like fetishization, and this is I think where people's minds first go to when they're thinking about disability and sex, is that like dark predatory, I'm bigger, I'm better, I'm stronger, I will be able to overpower you. Because traditionally disabled bodies haven't been seen as stronger. They haven't been, you know, there's always something weaker. There's always something that's like, you know, less about a disabled body. And that's what people get off on. And that's what I think's a real problem. And actually, how do we dismantle that? And how do we approach that topic without being like, don't have sex with disabled people and making people afraid?
I've got so many more questions, but I don't want to dominate your podcast by this. I'm fascinated by this, but it's in my mind. It's not just disabled people giving blowjobs and anal. It's also like the kind of other stuff that's important. It's the kind of what drives you in dating, and how does, you know, I've interviewed someone on my podcast that's coming out as well, and he said that he noticed date by day that his disability became more and more prevalent to the woman he was dating, i.e. problematic. And it's like, you know, do you know what I mean? I'm interested in that as well. It's like, what's the dynamic between the two of you? Does one person have sympathy? Does one person, is it resentment? Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I didn't realize that being out with you or being with you meant that I have to change your bag every now, you know, 3 times a day. I didn't know that I had to carry your chair. I didn't know that I had to pre-plan our journey to the cinema. All these things kind of, oh, if I'd have known all this, I might not have. That interests me as well. So yeah.
Oh, well, I feel like we're probably going to have another conversation because we're about to hit the hour mark.
Oh, man.
I know. Can you believe it? This is what happens when me and you get...
That's what we
This is what happens. This is what happens when me and you start chatting and we just start. And then we get like all caught up and all excited. But
that's my fault.
No, absolutely not, because I also love the conversations that we have, because I always feel like I learn something from them, and I learn something interesting. And I also find that you always give like a different perspective on how to look at things, and I really appreciate that, because I think there's nothing better in life than being able to take what you said and look at it from a different perspective, because that's how you grow. And like, you don't grow if you don't do that. So I always really appreciate that in our conversations.
You're more than welcome.
Last question for you, Jordan, and it's the one that I end this podcast on every single time, and I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and it's, are you disabled and proud?
So, I know we haven't got long, but I thought this is a question that I thought about, Brooke. The last time you asked me, I said, of course I am. I find disabled and proud. I understand why people say it and are it.
Yeah.
Proud for me isn't the word that I would use to describe me. I'm not ashamed of being disabled. Like, I'm doing a podcast about it. I've told people that there's no shame at all. I think I'm more disabled and content.
I
I'm
that.
disabled and content. It's not something I feel I have to tell the world about, but equally, it's not something that I feel the need to be embarrassed or shy about. If somebody asks me, I would chew your ear off for an hour about my disability and why it's great and why I love it. I wouldn't say, because the word proud would be, I've not done anything. It's just, it's something that's happened to me. So I think pride comes from something that you've done. I've not done anything. It's something that I just have, and it's fine with me. So, not to be difficult or awkward.
Yeah, but you are being.
I'm being very difficult and awkward.
Standard you.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm annoying. I would say I'm disabled and content. And for those that are proud, I have no issue with that at all. I get it. I just think the way I look at it is I'm content. I'm disabled. It's not a thing. And that might be because my disability is not visible in the way that yours is or other people's. Or something. That may play a role in it as well. You don't know I'm disabled until I tell you. So that might be a part of it as well. But I'm content. I'm disabled and content.
Do you know what? I think that's a perfect place to end this podcast. I really do. It's wrapped everything up so nicely. I really enjoyed this conversation, as I said.
Me too.
I always love getting to hang out with you because you're one of my favourite people to chat to. So thank you for coming on again. I feel like we're going to have to do part 3 and let's maybe not leave it 6 months.
6 months. I'm putting in the diary right now. All
amazing.
On you.
Speak to you soon, Jordan.
Take care, Brooke. See you later. Bye-bye.